I've been collecting tools nearly my entire life. When I was a kid, my parents got me a socket set for Christmas and a soldering iron, and along the years, I've gotten other tools as gifts, or I've just bought them for projects. And so now at 36 years old, I've got a pretty good set of tools that I can do just about anything I need to. Today, we're gonna go over my top 5 tools that I would just not wanna do without operating a farm. And number 5 on my list is my socket set. Now, when I say my socket set, it's kind of cheating because I've got several socket wrenches, sockets, imperial and metric. I've got torque wrenches, and I just could not maintain my vehicles and my tractor and do a lot of the other work that I do without my socket set. You know, I assembled this sawmill and I maintain the sawmill with the socket set. I repair my vehicles and my tractor with my socket set. So I recommend anyone starting to collect a good socket set. Now, I don't know exactly how old I was when I was given the socket set that these 2 wrenches came in, but I was pretty young. I mean, let's say 12. I could have been as old as 15. I mean, 20 plus years ago. They've been serving me well ever since. They were made in the USA. These are Craftsman. I don't think you can buy Craftsman brand anymore made in the USA. I could be wrong about that. But get yourself a good set of sockets. They'll last you the rest of your life. So next on my list at number 4 is an impact driver. Now, I'm not selling any particular brand here. I've had luck with this brand, DeWalt, but there's several others that you can pick from. The one thing that I do recommend is that you get a bigger battery than what comes in the box with your typical impact driver, unless you just want to carry like 3 or 4 around with you and worry about keeping them charged. This also gives you a charge indicator on the back, so I like this setup. Now, if you've never used an impact driver before, you've probably used a drill driver, or what's commonly known as a drill. It looks like this. Let me grab one. You may be more familiar with a drill or a drill driver. Now, these are still very useful tools, and I like having both around. They serve their purpose, but really the only time I use this now is when I need to drill a hole. But there are a few reasons I really like to use an impact driver over a drill. For one, you can quickly attach any bit that you need, whether it's a driver or a socket extension like I have on here right now. But it's also got a slip clutch on it, which allows me to control the power by how far I pull that trigger. And then it's very comfortable to use compared to the drill driver because all of the power is transferred into the bit, meaning if I use a drill driver, that torque force can be transferred to your hand, which is why when you're using a drill driver, sometimes it'll just about yank your arm off. Well, all that force is transferred into the driver, and it's just very comfortable to use. So I've built everything with this. I've built our chicken tractors and everything. I also use this to maintain my vehicles and tractor as well. And it's just something I do not want to do without on the farm. Now, before we move on to number 3, I want to ask you to please hit the like button and subscribe if you find this content useful. The only way we can keep this going is if our channel continues to grow. So thank you for subscribing. Okay, now on to number 3. Number 3 is a welder. Now, this is not something I use every day, but when I need it, it is extremely valuable. To give you an example, I recently ordered a set of pallet forks for the front loader bucket of my tractor. I need it to move things around like hay bales and logs. The problem is it fell apart in about a week. It just had some really poor welds and thin gauged metal in spots that should have been a little bit beefier. Now, these pallet forks were about $200, and I guess I could have sent them back, but I mean, they really were just destroyed. I wish I had some footage or pictures of it, but it basically just broke apart, and I was able to weld it back together and reinforce some areas that needed it. And I'm not a great welder. I'm not gonna be making a living welding, but the MIG welders make it about as easy as it can be to weld something and get you going again. Now, number 2 on my countdown of most useful tools here on the farm is not gonna surprise any of you who have watched this channel before. It may only surprise you that it's not number 1, but the next tool on my list is my chainsaw. Now, I use this chainsaw almost as much as I use my tape measure or my socket set. The chainsaw comes in incredibly handy for clearing and felling, which I have a lot to do on this timber property that we bought and are trying to turn into pasture for our chickens and our cattle. Now, which chainsaw do I recommend you getting? Well, if you're doing some serious work, I recommend you getting a good chainsaw in the pro range for that brand. This is a Stihl MS362C. It's the entry level to their pro line. Husqvarna and other brands make some really good chainsaws as well. Here's my main recommendations when it comes to chainsaws or almost anything. Don't buy cheap. Don't buy the most expensive unless you just absolutely know you need it. Buy somewhere in the middle. That's gonna do really well for you, and it's gonna get you probably the best value. That's why I recommend something like the Stihl MS362, maybe even their 462, but you probably don't need their 600 series saws unless you're just really going to town. Now, number 1 on my list of things that I just would not want to live without in the operation of our farm, and remember, I have a full-time job in addition to running this farm. We've got our YouTube channel, I do a podcast. I'm really busy, and so any force multipliers like my chainsaw or the other tools that I've talked about are incredibly valuable to me. But there is nothing like this next tool that multiplies my input by just sometimes immeasurable amounts. And of course, I am talking about my tractor. Now, I've got an old 1980 something, I don't even know the year. They were made between 1985 and 1990, I believe. Kubota L2250. It's a 26 horsepower tractor. It's very simple in its operation. It doesn't have all the emissions junk on it. The only thing I wish is that maybe I had a 40 horse or so tractor, and maybe someday, but for now, I'm telling you, this 26 horsepower tractor does wonders, and especially with the mower deck that I have on it, I can clear brush up to 1.5 inches. Now, something that you need to look for when you're shopping for a tractor, other than that it runs, is that it has 4-wheel drive and that it's got a front loader. Those things don't cost a whole lot more, especially when you're shopping for a used tractor. You're gonna pay a little extra, but it gives you value that you can't imagine. Tractor without a front loader and without 4-wheel drive is gonna do less than half of what a 4-wheel drive front loaded tractor can do. So there are my top 5 tools that I do not want to live without. If you have questions or you have a different list, post them in the comments and maybe I'll do a part 2 and see how my list grows over time as we're doing this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.